Jamila, you were in Brussels just yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yesterday, yeah.
Yeah.
The hearing was at 10:45. And
how was my introduction on the case against Mark Rutte?
How it was?
Did I miss anything?
Okay, I guess it's yeah. So it's not a lawyer who is initiating this case. He is a financial expert, but he's a legal advisor as well. And somehow he's taken it upon himself to do two cases in Holland, as you explained before. One is to take the Dutch state and Mark Rutte to court for the son, I believe, of a woman who died in Gaza. And the other case is a sort of a class action lawsuit thing where 40 victims of a tax office policy, they lost a lot of money, they had a lot of psychological and real grief. Basically the tax office said that they had
in Dutch that's a toeslagenaffaire, so at least the Dutch will know what we're talking about. People were getting subsidized, were relieved if they didn't make much money, so for childcare and those things, but they had to pay back loads of money because supposedly they didn't do their forms right. Now they did everything right, but they went into financial problems to the point that some people lost their children or committed suicide and all those things. So that's a very big screw up of the
very big traumatic event, and it's been going on for years. It's supposed to have been corrected, but it still hasn't. But anyway, so this Mr. Aachboun, who we're talking about, this fiscalist, financial expert, he has represented 40 of those parents. So these two cases are still going on in the Netherlands. And his fear is if Mark Rutte becomes Secretary General, which is supposed to happen on the 1st of October, officially, then he will claim immunity, as all possessions and people of the NATO will have immunity, and he then cannot prosecute Mark Rutte anymore. So he went, as the NATO is situated in Belgium, he went to the Brussels court to ask the judge to postpone the official start of Mark Rutte's Secretary Generalship and say, can we please have it after the verdicts come out for those two cases? So that's really what it was about. It was a very interesting case in the sense that it really came down to the question, how immune is NATO? I mean, is NATO above every law? Does the immunity of NATO override human rights? And human rights in the sense that a citizen or a financial expert such as Mr. Aachboun cannot take anybody to court anymore. And so it was a very principled, ethical court hearing. The arguments weren't so ethical from the defense side. So from NATO, by the way, wasn't there. They said, we are immune, we're not going to come. But what transpired was that NATO had written a letter to the Belgian state, saying that, listen, you are our host country, you need to do something on our behalf. So the Belgian state then submitted an adhesion request. So they're requesting to be party in this case, representing then NATO. And supposedly the lawyer of Mark Rutte is from the same office as the lawyers for the state. So it's all a bit of a muddle who's lawyer really. And there was some confusion about the argument that really this was a Dutch person taking a Dutch ex-prime minister to court, so it should be a Dutch affair. But now that the Belgian state has asked for adhesion to the case, it isn't a Dutch affair, it's a Belgian affair. So basically, Belgium had shot itself in the foot, or NATO had shot itself in the foot by asking Belgium to act on their behalf.
Yeah, so let's just to make sure that everybody gets what's the setting. Here's a Dutch lawyer seeking a case in Brussels because NATO is headquartered in Brussels. He could also have chosen, I suppose, The Hague or something. But he argues, well, this is to do with NATO, so we have to go to Brussels. Now, NATO, I'm just retelling the way I understand it from you. So if I make a mistake, correct me so people will understand what's going on. NATO, in my words, says, yeah, no way. We're not going to get to, we're immune. You cannot sue NATO. So we are not, in principle, out of principle, we are definitely not going to show up unless there's no other way. So they found their straw man, their stooge. They managed to get the state of Belgium to join because the state of Belgium granted immunity. That's the reason, right? NATO is headquartered in Belgium?
No, because they're the hosting state. And their take is that because they're the host of this organization, that they should make sure that the conditions under which they can do their work are guaranteed, basically. But the thing about immunity in the agreement, the Treaty of Ottawa, it says that NATO is immune from every crime, everything, their possessions, their people, even their advisors, which I think we should revise. I mean, how can you be immune for every crime? I mean, and so there's so much to say about this case. But
well, first off, it is not NATO that is taken to court per se. It is asking a judge to postpone installing a new Secretary General because he might be a criminal. You don't want to have a criminal in office. You don't want to have a person who is involved in a criminal case in the Netherlands.
Yeah, the request is for postponing the start date with the clause that, of course, if he is found guilty, then of course he, theoretically he can't become the Secretary General, that it should be aborted altogether, this nomination. Yeah. And of course, the Belgian state, on behalf of NATO, made a lot of fuss about that, saying that, and the lawyer for Rutte said that, that's impossible because he has been appointed unanimously, even though it took some time. Not everybody was unanimous from the start, but at the end, there was a lot of lobbying and a lot of energy was spent on getting this nomination, and so therefore he should take it. And there was some, I felt, implied threats to the judge saying that how it goes when you're nominated. It applies to judges as well. You have to take the nomination. You cannot not take it. And whereas, of course, the lawyer for Aachboun said, but that's nonsense. Stoltenberg has prolonged his appointment several times, and it's never been a political issue. He could do it again for half a year longer, until the processes in Holland have run their course and we know the outcome. They did some, the lawyer for the Belgian state had some, I call them dirty tricks, but he said, those two lawyers said, what actually are we talking about? Because Rutte will suffer a lot of reputation loss and he will not have an income. He will get 300,000 euros per year when he becomes Secretary General. At the moment, he doesn't get an income. He deliberately didn't apply for an interim salary.
Those aren't arguments. A judge will never weigh those arguments in this case.
Well, anyway, those are the arguments of the defense. And they said, but what is the loss for this client? Because what he demands in each of his processes in Holland is only 25,000 damage money. So for the person who lost their family member in Gaza, he's asking 25,000, but also for each of the 40 people in the class action suit case, he's asking 25,000. Together, that makes about 1.5 or something. But so they said, the amounts are very small, and he's explicitly demanded in Holland not to exceed the amount. So, there's really no big loss if he loses. But then when I asked Mr. Aachboun afterwards, like, what is this thing then about the 25,000? Why didn't you ask for more? He said it was a very deliberate thing to do because he's under a lot of pressure and attacks. And he said, if you do a case on your own, so without other lawyers, without help, just you representing somebody else, the maximum you can claim is 25,000. And so that's what he's done. He's claimed the maximum, and because in this way he is the most free to do the cases as he thinks is best, and he won't be. If he asks for no donations or people adding on to his case, then people might start asking demands on how to run the process or how to formulate the complaint. And he said, this way I'm independent. It's just me. I'm not asking donations. I'm not going out for, it's not a financial thing I'm doing. It's just about principle, about right. These people deserve to have a hearing in court and to get their right due if it's the judge decides as such. So it was a bit mean to say, he's only asking 25,000 when they know very well this is a particular situation where that is the maximum. He's asked the maximum, really.
You just mentioned
and besides, Rutte's reputation in comparison to losing your family member or losing your life and children and whatever, it's no balance. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, well, the jury's still out on Rutte's reputation. He's not the most popular prime minister now in the Netherlands, though there were times he was. But but you should be able to do that court case. You cannot have a court case in progress and then lose the person you took to court because he found a job that grants him immunity. There should be mechanisms in place to
well, and ethically speaking, yeah. Do you want a head of NATO, if theoretically that is attracting all these cases against him? I mean, then ideally you want somebody with a clean record or at least proven clean record. So you would wait.
Yeah, but you're innocent until proven guilty. So we have to wait. That's all what this lawyer asks. I superimposed an image of him with Mark Rutte a moment ago. I have another one also with a plaque of the room that the court hearing was in. The verdict's going to be in 2 weeks, it says here in Dutch, but it was the Montesquieu room. Now maybe we can close off this by you.
Building is called Montesquieu.
The building. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I can't read it right. The Palace of Justice, Montesquieu. The building was called Montesquieu. Yeah, but that was relevant, right? Maybe you can explain.
That was very relevant because he.
Hang on.
That was.
Could you? Yeah. Could you summarize your impression of the court case and the way the judges weighed both arguments, and then why was that building relevant?
I couldn't really see the judge because I was sitting behind the lawyer for Aachboun. So I saw, I bend over sometimes to see him, but I was busy typing. I heard that he'd frowned several times because the lawyers for Rutte and the state of Belgium had said that really he wasn't able to judge on this case. That the NATO was above all member states of the NATO member states, and so not any individual state could rule over NATO. And that applied to NATO and it applied to the UN. And so you saw the Belgian judge frowning, because several times he was told, not to be disrespectful, but you have no say in this case. You cannot judge on this case. And yeah, so I don't know how the judge will take this, but at the end, the Aachboun, the one who took the case to court, he was allowed to say something himself as well. And he stood up. He was seated before the lawyer. And so he stood right in front of the judge, basically, or sort of right in front. We couldn't hear him very well because he was so close to the judge. He needn't talk very loudly. So, sitting in the back, it was difficult to hear. But he was saying, Rutte is not a possession of the NATO. They're two different things. That's why I asked both of them, why I went against both of them in this court case. And he said, we're in this building that is named after Montesquieu, and he's the father of the Trias Politica. And he really made an appeal to the judge saying, what does this building mean if we cannot, as citizens, try to get justice in this court? His lawyer had also said, it really comes down to what weighs heavier, human rights or the immunity of NATO. Is NATO above everything, even above human rights? And so Aachboun then referred again to what his lawyer had said. He said, this is all about the right of a citizen to ask for justice in front of a court. And if it's wiped away by immunity, if diplomatic organizations are per definition out of shot, you cannot get justice. What does this building mean? Then, and he got very emotional. At first I thought he had lost his text of what he wanted to say, but he was sort of choked up. And it seemed that it really affected the judge and the scribe as well. And the room was silent, and also the lawyers of the other side, they didn't say anything. And it really, actually, it was a very beautiful moment. It really was a pure moment of what now, this is crossroads in law. Where are we at? Are these organizations just free to do whatever they want? Because there is no other way for a citizen, he explained, to do this route. You cannot go any other procedure. This is the only one. And if this doesn't work either, then what is there for citizens to do?
Okay, we have to wait for 2 weeks
Yep.
for the verdict. Okay, we are going to go to the next lawsuit, but what came to mind a moment ago is this is going to roll into a question to you, because you're very well aware of all the details of the Julian Assange case. There is precedent, I would argue, where a journalist got asylum by a country, by Ecuador, and was granted citizenship and was granted diplomatic status also. Now that was denied by United Kingdom. Julian Assange was not given the diplomatic immunity that comes with working for the embassy. United Kingdom argued, we have to register those people, and only with a clean slate, or however they called it, will he be admitted to be immune. Does that resemble this case with Rutte? I mean, he can only come into office and inherit that immunity by NATO if he's clean, if there's no pending lawsuits, you would say, no?
You would think, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Aachboun also said his demands for this 25,000 and this 1.5 million, once Rutte gets into office for NATO, everything in his, his official house, he will get a house from NATO in Brussels, which will be his working house. It's not his own, but it also belongs to NATO. Everything that is stored in there is untouchable. So, you cannot even claim the money then. You can't do anything.
Were there journalists present apart from you?
I think there was one citizen journalist from Belgium, and there was one, I think, from Belgian press agency, but I'm not sure. He was writing on a piece of paper.
Okay.
But there was nobody of the Dutch main press. No.
You could imagine that once
they missed something really interesting. I mean, I'm sure that some of the journalists for the regular press, that they really, sometimes must get annoyed that they're not allowed to go to these things, because they're very interesting hearings.
Oh, by their boards, you mean? By their newspapers? Why they're not sent?
They're not allowed to go, but I mean, I'm sure that some of these journalists would really want to go. It's just an interesting case.
Okay. What's your? You can't make predictions, but gut feeling, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, following the Rainer Füllmich case, where the judges were visited afterwards by people we don't know but assume are, the intelligence agencies or whatever. I now think this is going to happen to this judge. I mean, he seemed at least neutral, if not critical, because he just frowned, like, how come you say that I can't judge on this case? It was quite arrogant. The lawyer for the Belgian state, several times he said things like, like, of course NATO was above everything else, and if you didn't know that, you were basically a diplomatic nitwit, and something like that. So it was all a bit presumptuous, and that member states of NATO had given away their sovereignty in certain areas to NATO, so they couldn't do anything anymore about correcting it, and it was all a bit like, really, do we want this? is this how it is? And so, yeah, I just assume this judge will be told what the wanted outcome is, and probably he will be told what consequences are if he doesn't judge that way. I don't know. This is my speculation.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay, so in the Netherlands, when there's a complicated case, typically there will be multiple judges, 3 judges. The way I understand it, this was just the one judge who's got this up on his shoulders. Okay, good luck.
Judge and then the scribe, and yeah, it's just a preliminary, not preliminary, it's like an interim hearing.
Yeah, this was the second. This was the second hearing in this case, no? Right?
Well, the preliminary hearing was just to set dates and time and which pieces, and this was the actual hearing.
Yeah, so now we get 2 weeks before the verdict. Okay, thank you for that.